I got the divorce papers by email while I was still in the desert. 13 years of marriage ended in a PDF attachment. My name is Nathan, 42 years old, a staff sergeant with the 82nd Airborne. I'd been in Kandahar for 4 months when Becky decided she was done waiting. The subject line read, "Let's be adults about this." The message itself was 3 sentences long. She'd already filed the paperwork. She'd already emptied our joint account. She'd already moved her new boyfriend Jeremy into our house in Spokane. I read the email twice, closed my laptop, took a shower in the communal stall, got dressed for my shift, said nothing to anyone. When I got back to my bunk that night, I replied with one word understood. That was it. No argument. No begging. No threats. Wilson, my bunkmate, noticed something was off. "You good, man?" he asked, not looking up from his book. "Yeah," I said, "just some stuff back home." He nodded. That was the end of it. Military guys know when to leave things alone. Truth is, I wasn't surprised. 6 months before deployment, things had changed. Small things. Becky stopped asking about my day. Started working late at the dental office where she answered phones. Started going to the gym 3 times a week, but never seemed to break a sweat. New clothes. New friends I never met. New passwords on her phone. I didn't confront her. Didn't start checking her messages or following her around. That's not who I am. But I wasn't blind either. So I made some quiet moves of my own. Nothing dramatic, just precautions. I secured important documents in a storage unit across town. Birth certificate, marriage license, house deed with only my name on it thanks to the VA loan, military benefits paperwork. I moved my grandfather's watch and my mom's old silver to the same unit. Things that mattered. I also opened a separate account at a different bank and started diverting part of my pay there. Not enough that she'd notice, but enough that I wouldn't be starting from zero if things went south. The night before I deployed, she hugged me at the airport and said, "Stay safe, okay?" Her eyes were dry, like she was saying goodbye to a coworker, not a husband heading to war. I should have known then, but part of me still hoped I was wrong. Deploying was always hard, but this time it felt different. I was miles away in Kandahar, surrounded by sand, heat, and the constant hum of helicopters, while my life back home was quietly unraveling. Becky didn't call or text much anymore, and when she did, it was brief, distant. I figured she was busy with work or trying to keep things normal, but deep down I sensed something was wrong. I remembered the little signs, her new friends I never met, the extra hours at the dental office, the silence when I asked about her day. None of it added up, but I didn't rush to conclusions. My dad always said, "Think before you act, son. Be sure." So I kept my head down, focused on the mission, but I was quietly preparing for whatever was coming. Back home, I had taken steps to protect what was mine. I moved important documents and valuables into a storage unit. I opened a secret bank account and funneled a portion of my pay there. Not enough to raise suspicion, but enough to keep a foothold. I wasn't planning for divorce, but I was preparing for betrayal, just in case. Then the email came. Becky had already filed. She'd drained our joint accounts and moved her boyfriend into our house. Reading it in the middle of the desert, the words hit harder than any bullet. I closed my laptop and stared at the wall. No anger, no shouting, just cold, silent acceptance. I felt oddly calm, not because I was numb, but because I was ready. I didn't need to yell or fight. I just needed to survive this and come back stronger. There was still a mission ahead, not just overseas, but at home. That night, Wilson asked if I was okay. I said yes, but I knew things had changed. This wasn't just a deployment. It was a battle I hadn't expected, one I intended to win on my terms. Deploying was always hard, but this time it felt different. I was miles away in Kandahar, surrounded by sand, heat, and the constant hum of helicopters, while my life back home was quietly unraveling. Becky didn't call or text much anymore, and when she did, it was brief, distant. I figured she was busy with work or trying to keep things normal, but deep down I sensed something was wrong. I remembered the little signs, her new friends I never met, the extra hours at the dental office, the silence when I asked about her day. None of it added up, but I didn't rush to conclusions. My dad always said, "Think before you act, son. Be sure." So I kept my head down, focused on the mission, but I was quietly preparing for whatever was coming. Back home, I had taken steps to protect what was mine. I moved important documents and valuables into a storage unit. I opened a secret bank account and funneled a portion of my pay there. Not enough to raise suspicion, but enough to keep a foothold. I wasn't planning for divorce, but I was preparing for betrayal, just in case. Then the email came. Becky had already filed. She drained our joint accounts and moved her boyfriend into our house. Reading it in the middle of the desert, the words hit harder than any bullet. I closed my laptop and stared at the wall. No anger, no shouting, just cold, silent acceptance. I felt oddly calm, not because I was numb, but because I was ready. I didn't need to yell or fight. I just needed to survive this and come back stronger. There was still a mission ahead, not just overseas, but at home. That night, Wilson asked if I was okay. I said yes, but I knew things had changed. This wasn't just a deployment. It was a battle I hadn't expected, one I intended to win on my terms. Back home, Becky's behavior had changed slowly but noticeably. It started with small things I barely registered at first. She stopped asking about my day, stopped sharing her own. The dinners we used to have together became quiet affairs where she stared at her phone more than at me. I remember the nights she worked late at the dental office, supposedly answering phones, but never really breaking a sweat. The new clothes she bought, the gym membership she rarely used, and the friends she made, none of whom I ever met. She had become distant, like she was living a parallel life I wasn't part of. I could have confronted her. Maybe I should have. But I wasn't that guy. My dad always said, "Pick your battles wisely, son. Not every fight is worth the bruises." So I stayed silent, observing, protecting what I could without tipping my hand. The suspicion gnawed at me, but I refused to act on guesses. I needed facts. I needed proof. So I kept watch from a distance, quietly tightening my grip on the parts of our life I still controlled. When the email came, I already knew the truth, but seeing it in black and white was another thing. Becky had drained our accounts, moved in her boyfriend Jeremy, and started a new chapter, one that didn't include me. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was calculating. Betrayal was a weapon, but I had one too: patience. The slow drip of her deceit had become a flood, but I was ready. What I lacked in presence, I made up for in preparation. This wasn't just about a marriage ending. It was about reclaiming what was mine. That day in Kandahar, I sat alone in the mess hall when my phone buzzed again. A bank notification. Another withdrawal. $88,500. Almost everything we had left. I set down my fork and opened the app. Our joint account balance was down to $22.37. The savings we'd built over years gone. Murphy, one of the guys from my unit, glanced over. Bad news. I locked my phone and forced a shrug. Just some account stuff. That night, I called the bank's customer service from the base phone center. Turns out Becky had been moving money for weeks, small amounts at first, then bigger transfers. The big one started the day after I deployed. I hung up and stood in the hallway for a long time, watching my teammates laugh and talk about their families and plans. Life was happening all around me, while mine was burning down. That's when Wilson found me. "Heard you look like a ghost at dinner," he said quietly. "What's going on?" I shared what I could: divorce papers, empty accounts, Becky moving her boyfriend into our house. Wilson didn't offer the usual sympathy. Instead, he asked one thing: "What's your plan?" I didn't have an answer yet, but I knew I had to make one. Later, I lay awake, restless. I pulled out my laptop and logged into our home security system, something Becky probably forgot I could access remotely. The cameras showed a strange truck in the driveway, a man I'd never seen walking our dog, using my coffee mug, wearing my Seahawks sweatshirt, and Becky laughing in the kitchen. Our home, now theirs. Something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger. It was colder, clearer, focused. This wasn't about emotion anymore. This was about strategy. 2 months later, I was back on American soil, but still operating under a different name. No fanfare. No announcements, just a quiet return, a mission of a different kind. I checked into a motel in downtown Spokane, blending into the background. I met James, my army buddy turned lawyer, at a diner outside town. He slid into the booth with a grin. "You look like hell." "Feel like it too," I replied. James handed me a thick folder packed with documents. loan papers, bank statements, that forged refinance application. The signature wasn't mine, but someone tried hard to make it look that way. The middle initial was wrong, the stroke pattern off. Becky's handiwork. Busy woman, I muttered. James nodded. And it gets worse. She listed her boyfriend Jeremy as a co-applicant. This guy's got 2 DUIs and a fraud charge from 2019. I took a deep breath. What are my options? Several, James said, but first I had to decide what I wanted. I want what's legally mine and for her to understand the consequences. James smiled. Then here's what we do. That day, I drove past our house. Jeremy's truck was gone, but Becky's car sat in the driveway. I watched, debated, knocking, confronting, but that wasn't the plan. Instead, I went to the bank, met the loan officer, showed him my ID and the real signature on my license. When he saw the forged documents, his face went pale. He promised to report it immediately. That night, Becky texted, "Who have you been talking to at the bank?" Jeremy said someone's asking questions. I didn't respond. The next day, I filed a police report and legal paperwork contesting the refinance due to fraud. I put formal notice that no property changes could be made without my presence. The game had begun. 2 days after filing the paperwork, Becky called. I let it go to voicemail. "Nathan, we need to talk. The bank called about the house. What are you doing? If this is about the divorce, we could discuss it like adults." Adults, the same word from her email. I still didn't respond. James called that afternoon. They froze the refinance money, but there's more. Your wife's boyfriend's been driving your truck. Yeah. He got pulled over today, driving on a suspended license. They impounded the vehicle. Good, I said. He also had prescription pads from Becky's dental office in the truck. They weren't blank. I closed my eyes. She's been stealing prescription pads? Looks that way. Police are investigating. I hung up and sat on the edge of the motel bed. This was bigger than I expected. Part of me wanted to warn Becky, but then I remembered the security footage, my house, my dog, my life, given away like it meant nothing. I met with the bank fraud investigator the next morning. Thompson, short guy, tired eyes, coffee stain on his tie, said, "This happens more than you think. Spouse deploys, other spouse sees opportunity. What happens now? We froze the funds from the refinance, but some of the money's gone. How much? About half, $14,600. I leaned forward. Where did it go? Thompson hesitated. I'm not supposed to share that info. It's my house, my name forged, my money stolen, I said. He nodded, then turned his screen toward me. The transfers went to a Daniel Spencer, someone I'd never heard of. Who is he? Not my department. Ask your lawyer to subpoena records. I called James as soon as I left. Daniel Spencer? Let me check. An hour later, James called back. Got it. Real estate agent. Specializes in quick sales, cash deals. She was planning to sell the house. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Becky wasn't just leaving me. She was orchestrating a full-scale operation to take everything. Daniel Spencer, the real estate agent, specialized in quick sales and cash deals. Exactly the kind of person who could turn my home into cold cash fast. James filled me in on what he'd uncovered. Spencer had done business with Jeremy Ryan, Becky's boyfriend, before, multiple deals over the past 2 years. Each time, the pattern was the same. The woman's home would be sold well below market value, and Jeremy would get a cut before moving on. I sat on a park bench trying to process it all. This wasn't a personal betrayal anymore. This was calculated. Akon. James warned me this was bigger than I'd thought. A conspiracy, not just isolated incidents. Jeremy had a history of targeting military families, exploiting deployments to swipe homes and money. I wondered if Becky was a victim, too, swept up in Jeremy's scheme, or a willing participant. Maybe she didn't know the full extent. Maybe she did. Either way, it didn't matter. This was my home, my life, my fight. James told me the FBI was already interested. Financial crimes crossing state lines, military personnel involved, they wanted to hear my story. For the first time since that email in the desert, I felt something close to satisfaction. Not because my marriage was over, but because the truth was finally coming to light. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a key player in bringing down a criminal operation. In the weeks that followed the arrests, the courtroom became the stage for a new battle. Jeremy and Spencer's plea deals laid bare a sprawling criminal enterprise, fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft spanning 3 states, targeting military families like mine. It was bigger than I imagined. The prosecutors detailed the scheme, how Jeremy preyed on deployed spouses, exploiting their absence to manipulate property sales, siphon money, and leave broken lives behind. Daniel Spencer, the real estate agent, was the middleman, cashing in on quick, undermarket sales while hiding the truth from buyers and sellers alike. Becky's role was still under scrutiny. She claimed ignorance, a pawn in Jeremy's game. Some believed her, others didn't. Her signed confession to forgery weighed heavily, but questions remained. Did she understand the full scope? Had she truly been coerced or complicit? The judge listened with little patience for excuses. Justice wasn't about sympathy. It was about truth and consequences. I sat in the courtroom each day, feeling a strange mix of vindication and sorrow. Vindication for fighting back and exposing the truth. Sorrow for the family I once had and the trust that was shattered. Friends and fellow soldiers reached out, offering support and sharing their own stories of betrayal and resilience. I realized this wasn't just my story. It was a shared experience, a cautionary tale for those who serve and protect. The verdict sent a clear message. Betrayal, especially against those who serve, would not be tolerated. As the gavel fell, I knew a chapter had closed, but my journey was far from over. With the legal battles behind me, the real work began, rebuilding my life from the ashes. Moving out of the house was harder than I expected. That place held memories, some good, some painful, but it was time to let go. I found solace in the simplicity of my new cabin. The creak of the wooden floors, the scent of pine and fresh air, and Scout's eager eyes waiting for our next walk. It all reminded me what peace could feel like. I started carpentry jobs around town, fixing fences, building decks, and helping neighbors with odd repairs. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. I like that. Sometimes, when the quiet settled in, I thought about what had been lost and what I'd gained. Betrayal had taught me resilience, patience, and the value of knowing your worth. Amid the solitude, I reconnected with old friends and made new ones. I attended support groups for veterans, sharing my story and listening to others. That exchange of strength helped heal wounds I hadn't even known were open. I also spent time thinking about forgiveness. Not for Becky, not yet, but for myself. I forgave my own silence, my own acceptance. I learned that healing wasn't linear, and that was okay. Every day was a step forward. Some days small, some big, but always progress. I was no longer just a soldier fighting battles abroad. I was fighting for my own peace at home. This quiet new beginning was mine, and I intended to protect it fiercely. Months into my new life, I started receiving messages I never expected. Letters from military spouses across the country, women and men caught in similar webs of deception, fraud, and betrayal. They'd heard about my case through the FBI, the media, or word of mouth. One letter stood out, a woman in Fort Worth who wrote, "You don't know me, but you saved our home. Thank you. We're fighting back because of you." Her words hit me harder than any courtroom verdict. It wasn't just about me anymore. My fight had become a beacon of hope for others. I began connecting with these families, sharing advice, resources, and most importantly, encouragement. It was healing in a way I hadn't anticipated. Helping others fight back reminded me of the strength I'd found in myself. I also realized how vulnerable deployed families can be. The loneliness, the distance, the trust placed in others. It's fertile ground for those looking to exploit. That realization fueled a new passion. I started working with veteran support groups, speaking about financial security and vigilance. I want to make sure no one else had to endure what I did. This unexpected chapter brought purpose to my pain. What started as a personal battle had become a mission to protect others. Sometimes, the darkest moments give birth to the brightest lights. For me, this was one of those lights. The FBI investigation expanded, uncovering more victims and weaving together a complex network of fraud. Jeremy Ryan and Daniel Spencer weren't acting alone. Their scheme reached into multiple states, involving accomplices skilled at exploiting deployed military families' trust and absence. Agent Patel kept me updated. "Your case is the linchpin," she said. "It's helping us connect dots and build a stronger prosecution." As new details emerged, I learned about other military spouses who'd lost their homes, their savings, and their peace of mind. Some were too broken to fight, others determined to seek justice. Their stories mirrored mine, their pain echoed mine. I felt a strange kinship with these strangers. We were bound by shared betrayal and the will to survive. Meanwhile, Jeremy and Spencer faced mounting charges. The evidence was overwhelming: forged signatures, fraudulent loans, illegal property sales. Their defense crumbled under the weight of truth. Courtroom days were emotionally exhausting. I sat through testimonies, some graphic and painful, all revealing the extent of the betrayal. But there was a growing sense of justice, a belief that right could prevail against calculated greed. The journey wasn't over, but with each passing day, the scales tipped closer to balance. One afternoon, as the courtroom buzzed with anticipation, I caught a glimpse of Jeremy's face, once confident, now etched with worry. He knew the walls were closing in. His slick bravado was gone, replaced by a man facing the consequences of his actions. Spencer's attorney tried to spin tales of misunderstanding, blaming others, downplaying the fraud. But the evidence was relentless. The forged signatures, the wire transfers, the recorded conversations, it all painted a clear picture. Outside the courtroom, Becky's presence was a complicated shadow. She attended sporadically, sometimes tearful, sometimes stone-faced. Her involvement was still being evaluated, but the impact on our family was undeniable. I focused on the facts, not the emotions. I reminded myself that this was about justice, for me, for my daughter, for the other victims. Each hearing brought me closer to closure, but also deeper into reflection. What had I learned? About trust, about resilience, about the importance of knowing your rights and protecting what's yours. The judge's stern gaze during deliberations made it clear. This wasn't just a legal battle. It was a warning to anyone who thought they could exploit those who serve. As the day ended, I felt the weight of months lift slightly. The fight had been hard but necessary. Justice wasn't just an ideal, it was becoming reality. The final decision in the case was a turning point. Not just for me, but for every military family watching, hoping for justice. The judge ruled firmly, upholding the prenuptial agreement and the fidelity clause that protected my assets. Becky's attempts to erase me from the deed and funnel money away were declared invalid. Jeremy and Spencer were sentenced to lengthy prison terms, their fraudulent empire dismantled piece by piece. The financial restitution ordered meant I could finally reclaim what was rightfully mine. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt a mix of exhaustion and relief. Months of anxiety, legal battles, and sleepless nights culminated in this moment of vindication. It wasn't just about money or property. It was about dignity, respect, and standing up against betrayal. Becky and I had finally severed ties completely. The divorce finalized, the past closed. But I knew healing would take longer. Some scars run deep. I started focusing on the future, channeling my energy into rebuilding my life on my terms. The cabin in Montana, Scout's loyal companionship, the simple work that brought me peace. That day marked an end and a new beginning. Returning to Montana after the final verdict was like stepping into a new world. The cabin, once just a quiet retreat, became my sanctuary. The scent of pine trees and the gentle flow of the creek were reminders that life could be simple and good. Scout greeted me with his usual enthusiasm, wagging his tail like I was the only thing that mattered. That dog was more than a companion. He was a symbol of loyalty and fresh starts. I threw myself into carpentry projects, the feel of wood and tools grounding me. The work was honest, and every nail driven felt like building a piece of my new life. Friends I'd lost touch with reached out, offering support and invitations. I realized I wasn't alone. There was a community ready to help me heal and grow. Some nights, the silence was heavy. Memories crept in uninvited, but I faced them head on. Healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about acceptance. I took to hiking the nearby trails, letting nature soothe the edges of pain. With each step, I shed pieces of the past, making space for hope. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, that felt enough. One evening, while working on a fence repair for a neighbor, my phone buzzed with a message that caught me off guard. It was from Becky. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The message read, "I never meant for things to end this way." For a moment, I wrestled with the urge to respond, to say something, anything. But years of pain and betrayal weighed heavily. I didn't know what to say, or if I even wanted to. I thought about the journey we'd both been through, the lies, the legal battles, the long nights wondering what could have been. I realized that sometimes closure doesn't come with forgiveness or reconciliation. Sometimes it's silence. I deleted the message. Instead, I focused on the life I was building. Scout's happy bark, the smell of sawdust in the morning, the quiet strength that came from independence. I'd made peace with the past. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And that was enough. Some wounds take time to heal, but I was on the path. No more looking back. Only forward. Life in Montana settled into a comforting rhythm. I woke with the sun, the fresh mountain air filling my lungs. The days were spent on carpentry projects, helping neighbors, and exploring the vast wilderness around me. Each task, each hike, was a step toward reclaiming my peace. Scout was my constant companion, his loyalty unwavering. Together, we navigated the quiet trails, the silence between us a balm for old wounds. I joined a local veteran support group, sharing my story and listening to others. Their resilience inspired me, and in return, I found strength in their shared experience. We weren't alone. The legal battles were behind me, but the lessons remained. I became passionate about educating military families on financial security, urging vigilance against the kinds of schemes that had nearly destroyed mine. Through these efforts, I found purpose. My pain transformed into advocacy. Helping others avoid the traps I fell into gave my struggles meaning. Healing was a journey, not a destination. And on this path, I was finally walking with open eyes and an open heart. One of the most unexpected heroes in this whole ordeal was Scout, my German Shepherd. He wasn't just a pet. He became a symbol of loyalty, protection, and emotional strength when I needed it most. During the darkest nights, when silence pressed in and memories clawed at my mind, Scout was there. His steady breathing beside me, the warmth of his body, reminded me that I wasn't alone. He sensed my pain without words, offering comfort that no human could match. When I returned from deployments, Scout's enthusiasm was a healing balm. He didn't judge my scars, visible or invisible. He simply welcomed me home. In the months after the divorce, as I rebuilt my life, Scout was my constant companion. He accompanied me on hikes, keeping watch with sharp eyes and unwavering focus. He even kept a wary eye on strangers, silently guarding the space I was creating for myself. I realized how important that kind of steadfast support is, whether from a dog, a friend, or family. Scout's quiet presence was a daily reminder that even after betrayal and loss, trust and loyalty could be found again. He was more than a dog. He was my anchor. The journey from betrayal to healing wasn't a straight path. It twisted through anger, doubt, and loss, but it also led me to something I hadn't expected: renewal. Standing on the porch of my Montana cabin, Scout by my side, I looked out at the quiet woods stretching endlessly. This was my sanctuary now, a place where the past shadows no longer held power. I thought about everything I'd been through, the lies, the legal battles, the slow rebuilding. I had learned to trust myself again, to value my strength, my patience, my resilience. I had taken back control of my life, piece by piece. What started as a fight for justice had become a story of reinvention. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a survivor, a mentor, and an advocate for others facing similar battles. The scars remained, but they were reminders of the battles won, not wounds still bleeding. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light over the trees, I felt a quiet peace settle over me. This new era of vigilance wasn't just about watching for threats. It was about embracing hope. My life was mine again, and this time I would guard it fiercely.